Good morning. We are live. Good morning. I want to welcome our guests for joining us today. The name of our program today is so timely. It is called Compassionate Leaders Yield Loyalty and Results for Their Team. Thank you, audience, for joining us. And what I want to do is say, you know what? Go ahead and put a note in there that you're here in your comment section that you're here so we can say hi to you. And then also, as we go through our conversation today, go ahead and put your questions or thoughts in the comments, and then we'll work toward addressing them, if not during the program, before we end. So we want to welcome you for joining. I want to thank my guests. I do want to start off today by saying, in all honesty, we're just not all okay today. We're just not. The topic is compassion, and we're not okay today because of so many things as recent as yesterday, where yet another killings, 19 kids killed today.
Oops.
And then, so with that in mind, we're here today because as leaders and as people who work in organizations, have our own organization, we really strive. Oh, we really strive to lead and get work done. And what I realize in the work that I do is that leaders really want to do a good job, and they expect for their team members to do their work and be productive. And what I noticed too lately is that they're really committed to try and help understand more what their people need, right? Because let's face it, if our people are not productive, then they're not going to get their work done if they're not feeling good, right? So
Mhm.
I want to review with you a couple things first, just to review a little data. Today is the second anniversary of the George Floyd killing. And hate crime has really risen, and we have plenty of evidence for that. And this is all designed for us to talk about compassion, right? That's what we're here to talk about today. Um, it's hate crime is up 24% from 2022 to 2021 first quarter, and 54% increase since the pandemic began. So we have plenty of opportunity to express and show compassion and empathy toward others, because all of us at some point are just not feeling at our best. May this month, we have several things we want to recognize: Asian Awareness Pacific Islander Month, Jewish American Month, and Mental Health Month. So, those are some of the things that we're recognizing this month. And here's the deal: people attempt to do a great job daily, but when things happen, they're just not feeling okay and it's difficult. So that's the reason why we want to make sure that we show compassion, that we understand what people are going through. I want to introduce my guests now, which I'm super excited to have with us today. And what they're going to do is they're going to give a little one or two sentences so that you can know more about them. And then when we're finished today, we do have a slide which you'll be able to get their contact information from. So I have Melissa Gallagher, I have Fred Diamond, and Margaret Huang. So what I want to do is go around and ask you to say a little bit about what you do so our audience can know how fortunate they are to get wisdom from you and thoughts from you. So Melissa, can you start?
Of course. Thank you, everybody, for having me today. My name is Melissa Gallagher. I'm the Vice President of Mission Delivery here at Make a Wish Orange County in the Inland Empire. I've had the pleasure and honor of working with all of our Wish kids and their families for over 9 years and have enjoyed every moment of it. I do also work with the volunteers, and I have a team of 12 that I supervise. I'm excited to share my tips and tricks, and I look forward to hearing from my fellow speakers.
And thank you, Melissa. And here's what I want to say too. Melissa has been gracious because she wasn't even planning on being on our show. Gloria Crockett, who's the CEO of Make a Wish Foundation, was committed, but then she got so sick, and even in her not feeling well, she showed compassion because she helped us get in touch with Melissa. And so, Melissa, thank you for at the last minute saying yes, and we're really happy to have you. Thank you,
Thank you.
Fred Diamond. Tell us what you do, Fred.
Sure. My name is Fred Diamond. I'm based in Northern Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C. I'm the co-founder of an organization. It's called the Institute for Excellence in Sales. And our mission is to help sales leaders attract, retain, motivate, and elevate top-tier sales talent. I'm also the host and the producer of the Sales Game Changers podcast, of which Michelle was a guest on. And I'm also a two-time published author, Insights for Sales Game Changers. It's a sales book for sales leaders. And my book, which is coming out in the middle of July, a little bit of a different twist, is called Love, Hope, Lyme, What Family Members, Friends, and Partners of Chronic Lyme Survivors Must Know.
Okay. Wow. That is going to be a different twist. So that's coming out in July. You'll have to keep us posted about that then.
I will. And by the way, it's also Lyme Disease Awareness Month to add to all the things we need to be aware of right now.
Okay. See, there's a lot that we need to be aware of. Thanks for sharing that. Thank you, Fred. And then Margaret. So tell us a little bit, Margaret, about what it is that you do.
Hi, everyone. I'm the founder and CEO of Credence, and I am a consultant and a coach who helps new leaders integrate with their teams so that they can hit the ground running during a transition. And I work with leaders who are committed to equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I myself have a background as a former corporate executive and a nonprofit executive.
All right. See, guests, I told you we've got some wisdom and some knowledge and some experience today. And go ahead and let us know that you're here, guests. Go ahead and put your name in there so we can give you a shout out. So thank you so much again for being with us today to talk about compassionate leaders yield loyalty and results from their team. You know what? It all starts with awareness. It all starts with awareness. And so last week, when I was very disturbed at a minimum and saddened by the shootings in Buffalo and the shootings in Laguna Woods, which is in our neighborhood, and the shooting in Dallas, so much hate. So I was very upset about it. And I shared with some of my clients, as we already had calls scheduled. And, when they said, well, how are you? It couldn't be, oh, I'm good, because there were emotions going on. And I noticed that when I shared with them, that, you know what, I wasn't really feeling very good. I was very sad and upset and very disturbed. And what I found is that they were very receptive. So here's the deal. Even if it's not something that you yourself, that affects you yourself, the ability to see from someone else's lens is what's very important. And I saw with them that they were like, you know what, Michelle, thank you for sharing that, because I knew about it. And now I have a better understanding about how it's affecting you and how it affects other people. So it starts with awareness and being okay to let people know. And I want to share with you the definition of compassion, a definition of compassion. It starts with feeling. Okay, so a feeling, but not a fact, but a feeling of deep sympathy and sorrow for another who is stricken by misfortune, accompanied by a strong desire to alleviate suffering. So that's how compassion is defined. So, we're talking about how leaders can be more compassionate with their teams. And Margaret, I want to start with you. And can you help us understand the difference or similarity, compare compassion and empathy? I know you're an expert at this. Can you give us some knowledge and wisdom on this, please?
Well, I think it's important to understand when you're feeling empathy for someone, you're vicariously or you're experiencing their pain. Mm-hmm. You are relating to it. And when they do studies of your brain, looking at somebody else having something difficult going on, your brain actually mirrors the brain of that person who's undergoing pain and suffering. Now, with compassion, there's a big difference, because you said it yourself, Michelle, but you're moved to mitigate the pain of another, to help alleviate their suffering. So actually what happens is your brain activates in the areas where there's motion and activity. And so, and you will often be able to do something that makes you, I think it's hard not when you see, like if you're looking at any of the footage from the events that have happened in Buffalo, Laguna Woods, right, in Oviedo, Texas, it's really hard not to feel empathy. But you then switch that empathy over to compassion and begin some sort of motion. And that motion can be either, if you know the people, ask them what they need. What can you do to help? Or if you don't know the people, oftentimes people who've been through events like this have organized and asked for either a GoFundMe, or they have an organization organized on an issue that they feel will help solve this problem. And you, in your act of compassion, can get involved. It all depends on the exact and specific situation. But I think the key difference is, one is you're just mitigated to take action.
Okay.
I mean, you're moved, to take action to mitigate or alleviate someone else's suffering.
Okay. That's a good distinction. Thank you, Margaret. And before we started today and went live, we were talking about that. Like, one way to show compassion is, like you said, go to an event that someone is hosting. So I like that distinction. Take some action. So feel it and take some action would be a good distinction. So thank you for that. Thank you. And we have good news is we've seen a lot of that lately. And so, Melissa, let me ask you this, because I think one of the things that Margaret's talking about is taking personal accountability, right? I mean, that's what I hear you saying, Margaret, is instead of we feel and what are we going to do about it? So at Make-A-Wish, let me just ask you this, Melissa, at Make-A-Wish, which is an organization that who can't love the purpose of Make-A-Wish Foundation, right? Who could not appreciate and love that? And so, but how do you find that you and your team take personal accountability and then also show vulnerability to show that you're compassionate with your clients, with your team?
So that's a really important question now more than ever, with everything going on in the world, like we've been talking about. It's really important that we connect with our team and we make sure that they're being heard, and we're taking the time to have those one-to-ones with each and every person on the team to make sure, check in with them, make sure that they're feeling okay, that if they need anything, that we're there to support them. Because whether we're in the job or at home, we're all together at work, either way, we need to support one another to make sure that we can do what we need to do and carry out our mission and support one another to make sure that everybody's, has what they need to move on. It is a lot of, checking in and giving them a safe space to share whatever is going on, whether it's at work or home, or if they're open to it, and being vulnerable is really important. So we just really make sure everyone has a safe space to share.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And so I wonder, because vulnerability takes courage. Like you gotta be real. You gotta say, you know what, I'm not really okay, right? So do you have an example to share of like when you or someone on your team was vulnerable?
I think on a day-to-day basis, there's a lot of opportunity to be vulnerable, especially in the work that we do with, with children and children that have critical illnesses. So I think just making sure that where maybe if a team member is struggling with a wish or a goal, say, then talking it through with them and just showing the support that they need. We've had lots of staff member come and go. And when they are here at the office, we want to make sure that they have everything they need and they're able to have that safe space to share if something's not going the way they need it to, or they need something, or if they just need to go outside and get some fresh air. We've adopted a lot of things where you need to sometimes step away from what you're doing to do a better job at what you're doing, whether it's just go out, get some sunshine, come in, take a walk. Gloria's a big walker, so we do walking meetings just to get out of the office and really make sure that we're taking care of ourselves as well. That it's an important time to really think about yourself and make sure that you have everything you need and your team has everything they need.
It is. Thanks for sharing those examples. And because I can imagine that, you have a lot of joy and you have some sadness, right? Based on the work that you're doing. So to be able to acknowledge that, I love what you said, go out and get some vitamin D, go get some sunshine, go for a walk, go get a little exercise. That's never going to hurt anybody. So, so thank you for sharing that.
You're welcome.
Fred, I want to ask you a question. I know you tend to work with sales professionals. And so for sales professionals and all professionals, what are what do professionals expect from their leaders? And so we're saying leaders, here's what we can do. We can check in, we can give time. But what are you finding that people are actually expecting from their leaders? And then let me add to that, what are they expecting? And from your perspective and observations, how often are they getting it?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, give you a little example. I do a podcast called the Sales Game Changers podcast. We've done over 500 episodes. Prior to the pandemic, I remember one of the last shows we did prior to the pandemic was with a sales leader from LinkedIn, the USA VP of sales. And she talked about being vulnerable. And it was such an interesting message. Again, it was prior to the pandemic. So it was like, oh, she's being very authentic and being vulnerable. We do a show every day since the pandemic kicked in. You know what the most common word is that we've heard uttered on all of the episodes we've done since the pandemic started? Empathy.
What?
Empathy.
Okay, really?
Empathy. We did a word cloud of all the common sales words besides the thes and is. Empathy was number one with a bullet. Number two, listening. I should have said with a bullet, my apologies. But listening, I used to be a DJ, but listening and empathy and questioning. One of the questions we ask the sales leaders that we interview every day is, what are you conscious of? What is your biggest priority? And I interviewed a VP of sales from D&B, Dun & Bradstreet, last June. And he said measuring and monitoring our people's fatigue was the number one priority. This was June of last year of what is it now, 2022, of 2021. And that really stuck with me. It was June. It was a year and 4 months, after the pandemic started. And, he said, we spend time with that. We're focused on that. We ask people, how are you doing? It seems like such a, people have said we should stop asking people how you're doing. We should be asking our people how you're doing more frequently, because most of the interaction is still like this. It's still via the rectangle. People aren't still back in the office.
Yeah.
So you don't have that kinesiology and the tactility, if you will.
What's interesting about that too, when you ask how you're doing. So, because what happens is sometimes I notice people say, how you doing? And then they'll go on about their meeting. So it's not a real check-in, right? Like, well, how are you really doing? And why are you feeling that way, right? So what I would like to suggest is that people spend more time in that check-in phase. We do have a question, which I do want to show from Pamela. Hey, Pamela, thanks for joining us. Here's what Pamela said. People can be vulnerable once they feel safety and security. Right. So to that point, when people feel safe, then they can be vulnerable. But if they feel like they can't be trusted, then they're not likely to reveal how they really feel. So I'm going to ask you this question, Fred, kind of to go along with this. Are leaders reluctant to display compassion? Why or why not? And so leaders and then people in general, right? Because to Pamela's point, if you feel like, I can say, what, I'm not feeling good. Here's what happened. I'm really upset. I'm really done. I don't know what to do. I'm in a funk, right? So are leaders reluctant to display compassion because they might not really want to know? It might be too much information for them to feel like they can handle. So what's your thought or experience with that?
So I'll answer two ways. One is it's definitely shifted because of the pandemic. And I had a guest on my show in May of 2020 who said, everybody on the planet is dealing with the same three things. How do we recover from the illness side of the COVID? How do we deal with the financial side of the COVID? And third, whatever else they may be dealing with. Maybe there's a parent who is ill, or you haven't seen your parents in 18 months, whatever it might be. So for the first time in our history, at least our contemporary history, everybody's dealing with the same thing. So people have begun, but here's the thing that's unfortunate with sales and business is you need to show strength, right? And you need to make results. Even though we're in a very, very difficult time, people rely on the sales organization to help get them out of the pandemic, right? To lead the way with sales. And not everybody's been trained on that. And if we think about it, it's only been 24 months that we've used words commonly like authenticity and compassion and empathy. Most people haven't been trained on that, and to be honest with you, we run an organization, part of our group is called the Women in Sales Leadership Program.
Right.
The women are much more forward than the men. And a lot of the men have, because they've been told, you need to be more compassionate. You need to ask how you're doing. It's still a trait that a lot of them haven't been taught.
See, so what I'm going to say is thank you because you're a man and you said it. See, women feel it and see it and experience it. But
Well, I'm also very
shout out
evolved.
to
I'm
you,
very
Fred.
evolved. So
What'd you say?
I'm very evolved.
So that's awesome because that's true. And what I heard you say too was these are skills that typically used to be called soft skills, and I'm really happy because at the beginning of this year I saw that that's finally changing now from soft skills to power skills, right? And so the listening, the questioning, the empathy, those are power skills, and that's what we're talking about. Because if you use those skills, if you have those skills and you learn how to use them more effectively, then you will be able to show people that you care and appreciate. One of the things that I learned from John Maxwell, whose team I'm on, is that people are always thinking about three things when they're deciding to join our team, to follow us, and to be with us. They're wondering, can that person help me? Is this person going to be able to help me get what I want? And does this person care for me? Right? And what kind of character does this person have? So those are considerations that people have. And when they see that we have the character to stop, check in, listen, really listen, ask more questions from what we heard, then we're able to decide that these are who we want to follow. And so when people realize that being vulnerable is a strength, not a weakness. I mean, I love me some Brene Brown, and we learned from her that vulnerability is a strength, and it takes a lot of courage. So hopefully leaders are going to recognize that it's okay to show compassion. I'm gonna move on now, and so Melissa, this is coming to you. How do you and your team learn to accept and celebrate differences at Make-A-Wish? I mean, one of the big problems that we have is that there's so much hatred and confusion and so much misunderstanding. And so how would you say that you and your team accept and celebrate differences? And then, you know what, Fred and Margaret, you can chime in too.
So that's a good question. This is something that we have put a lot of effort into. And one of the things we did was we did a Gallup Q12 survey for our team to really find out if, how our team felt. Do they feel that we are listening? Are we caring enough? What do we need to do? And so there was a few, like most of the areas we felt we did really well. And in the end, it came out we're doing well. But there are some areas that we want to work on. So it's really about listening, figuring out what we can do to make things, better for them and to celebrate our wins together and work on that. So that's one area that we worked on. We constantly make sure that our team feel that they're being heard or they're having input into whatever we're working on. So we've created employee committees where they run the committee, they have a budget, they have leadership on each committee to really make sure that they feel ownership of those committees and really how we celebrate differences in the office and what we can do differently. So we've put a lot of effort in this, and we're really working to make sure we celebrate everyone and not just all of the leadership or management always saying, this is what we're doing, this is how we're doing it. We're allowing our team to really participate and really be part of the decisions and how we celebrate and what we do to make things feel more inclusive.
There you go. That's encouraging because you said people want to be heard. What we learned from Stephen Covey is they do want to be heard and they want to be understood, right? So the fact that you're doing that is very cool. Hey, we have a couple of comments here I want to plug in here and show from our audience. This is interesting from the LinkedIn user. She said, I saw a lot of willingness among business colleagues to show vulnerability during the first 6 months or so of COVID. Now, many people are, quote, back to normal outwardly, but are still obviously struggling. So thank you, LinkedIn user, for sharing that. Anybody have any thoughts or comments about that? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I'll give a quick comment. Thank you, LinkedIn user, for that comment there. About 5 months into the pandemic, we had one of our podcasts, Sales Game Changers podcast, and somebody said via the question panel, I'm suffering from empathy fatigue. This was probably July of 2020. And what should I do or can we take a break from being empathetic was actually the question. And
Oh
my
my
guest,
goodness.
yeah, my guest, who's a VP of sales at a Fortune 1000 company, said, if you're suffering from empathy fatigue, go to the beach for the weekend, because sales and business is all about empathy. Sales, if you're not empathetic to what your
Yeah.
customer's going through, if you're not able to put yourself in the position to understand, you're eliminated from sales. So it wasn't, hey, I understand. Yeah, let's go back to not being empathetic. It's like, that's table stakes, right? And before I turn it over, I think I want to mention one word we haven't mentioned yet, Michelle, is emotional intelligence.
Uh-huh.
And there's a great speaker we've had. Her name is Colleen Stanley, who wrote Emotional Intelligence for Sales and Emotional Intelligence for Sales Leaders.
Mhm.
And, she was defining them as soft skills, a word you used before. And I said, you know what? Emotional intelligence is a hard skill. If you're in sales or BD and you're not
Definitely.
emotionally intelligent, you don't
Right.
use it as a hard skill, you ain't going to be successful.
Amen to that. Amen. We have another comment. Thank you for that. And then, so I want to show this because it's going to lead us right to what Margaret's going to talk about. And this comes from another LinkedIn user. With empathy and compassion, we must also be careful to be other focused and not self-focused. Coping and processing tragedy will look different for everyone. Because I can empathize with your suffering, I should not expect you, generally speaking, to have the same needs as I. Another opportunity for leaders is to support employees with the meaningful resources to get through the nuances and the safe space. Yes, there's that safe space again, to be okay with not being okay. That too is showing strength. All right. Thank you so much. Absolutely. And so with that, understanding that everybody has different needs, right? We're not all the same. We talked about that uniqueness. We're not all the same. So Margaret, I'm going to ask you to help us understand, kind of weave in that thought that the LinkedIn user shared with us. Weave that into, we said we're celebrating Asian Awareness Pacific Islander Awareness Month. So how can we do that this month? We still have time. How can we do this month and every month and every day? So answer that part first, and then I want to ask you how we can monitor our emotions to remain balanced.
And let me say that when you're saying you're fatigued, one of the ways to mitigate that fatigue is to move into action and taking steps to show your compassion. But I would want to stress that it's like you said, Michelle, everybody's different. So permission-based is really important. What do you need? May I do this for you? Will this be helpful for you? And, for speaking as somebody who very much identifies with the AAPI community, I would say that there has been so much hate and suffering on the business end that I would tell people, do something like have a meal in Chinatown. The traffic is down. People are scared to go in. Seeing people who are not just Chinese going into Chinatown always helps the safety and the feeling of safety inside that town. So support, and there are many local Chinatowns who need that support right now. They've been pretty devastated by COVID. And if you can't do that because there's not a Chinatown near you, then support a business that is Chinese owned or Asian owned, or actually any person of color. That's a great strategy. And I would also say that if you could spend some time learning about the history and understanding how long these systems have been in place, there are fabulous, more and more amazing documentaries coming out. Take a little bit of time to understand who Vincent Chin is, understand how Chinese couldn't have citizenship, that there were people incarcerated during the world wars, that you spend some time learning about that and sharing what you learned. And then sometimes, like, I have so appreciated when someone has picked up the phone and said to me, I'm worried. Are you okay? Do you need someone to talk to? That is a great thing to do.
Yes.
I will say that this community in particular, one of the things that they struggle with is feeling invisible. And if you can make sure that you see them, that you're concerned, that is a great step. And if you want to, switching to your other question about maintaining balance.
We have about 1 minute. I'm sorry. I know time goes so fast.
Like we've spent today talking about the difference between empathy and compassion. Learn more about those words. Learn more about the different words so that you can correctly understand what you are feeling.
Oh, good.
You
Okay.
may not be mad, you might be disappointed,
Okay. Oh, okay.
right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay.
There could
That's
be a
good.
number of different feelings that you're feeling. That's a great way to check in on yourself.
Good, thank you. And I was able to see one of your presentations last week where you talked about those ranges, and it was very helpful. There's a difference between feeling disappointed and feeling angry. Very, very big difference. So we need to kind of do what we said in the beginning was our self-care, right? We need to take time to acknowledge how we're feeling, what that means, and what can we do to make sure that we feel better. Golly, our time is up. So I'm going to ask Ariel. There you go, Ariel. She's on it. Thank you so much. So guests, I thank you so much for your very powerful comments and questions and thoughts that you shared, that joined us in the audience, and to each one of you, to Fred and to Margaret and to Melissa. Thank you so much for joining us. I knew the time would go fast. So audience, please make sure you take a snapshot or something of this, and you can make sure that you know how to get in touch with each of us to continue the dialogue. So again, I thank you so much for joining us. And with that, continue to make sure that every day is special, because today matters.